Welcome, everybody, to this episode of MindShare, where Sanguine Strategic Advisors invites subject matter experts across a variety of different business categories to help everyday business owners solve those problems that are just keeping them up at night. Today, we're happy to have Larry Heslin on from Email Industries. Hi, Larry.
Hi
Thanks
there.
for
Nice to
joining
see you,
us.
Kevin. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, glad to have you today. Larry is with Email Industries. Their organization provides services to companies who are dealing with everyday email challenges, whether it's deliverability issues, warming up a new email address because they're trying to run a campaign. So, with that brief introduction, I just want to do our normal shtick and give Larry an opportunity to introduce himself. First of all, Larry, who are you?
Hi there. Nice to meet everybody. So I'm Larry, head of accounts and sales operations at Email Industries. I've been in the email marketing space for the better half of the last decade.
What do you do?
My focus has been in helping brands and people figure out how to make email successful for them. And I take a love and joy in helping our clients every day to make email the most money for them possible.
Excellent. And then tell us, why do you do that? Like, why email? Like, why have you gotten into it? Why have you grown this company?
Yeah, high level. I came from the lead gen and affiliate space back in the day, and I realized that like the passion I had was in helping brands figure out how to make marketing successful for them. Over time, I realized, email's that one channel that I think will never die, and it's continued to grow and become something better and better. It's also challenging because of the different filters and the challenges that they present to it. So being able to help brands figure out the solutions to make sure that they stay deliverable, that is my it helps me stay up every night and stay happy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've run into occasional email challenges, and it's no fun when you're trying to run a business and your emails are not getting delivered properly.
That's
So,
right.
for those that don't understand email deliverability generally, why don't you just give us a little preface, like what is email deliverability and why does it matter more than even open rates or click rates? Like, why is deliverability kind of the be all and end all of email?
Absolutely. So deliverability, even the most senior email expert, or email marketing and marketing representatives I work with, they get this definition confused. By definition, it's literally the ability for your email to land in the inbox, whether that's the inbox, promotion tab, social tab, just one of those primary tabs. A lot of people still think of delivery because of like their ESP and their sending tools will say, I have a 99% delivery rate. Well, that's great. Your email went out to 99% of people, but did it wind up in the inbox spam folder or didn't show up at all? And that's where deliverability comes in is helping people measure and understand, how often they stay in the inbox, and our strategies help people figure out how to do that.
Okay. And what's the biggest misconception that people have
Yeah,
regarding deliverability?
I think there's still a lot of people who, the filters have constantly evolved. And back in the 2000s, the big thing was making sure your content wasn't anything that looks spammy. Don't have free stuff in all caps in the subject line, or don't have offers inside the email that are, maybe a little bit vague or misconstrued. The reality is that this has become a much more in-depth thing where we're looking more often than not at what we call sender reputation and list quality, and you having the right practices as a sender rather than the content itself. But the content does come into play with how those things are received. Other things, people always think, oh, the more email I send, like I got a really low open rate, so I'm just going to blast a whole bunch of email, maybe to some of my segments that I don't hit as often, or maybe don't even want to receive this message. That's going to mean I'm going to have a better deliverability and a better open rate next time around. Well, in some instances, absolutely, for that finite 2 weeks, things look great. Yeah, that can make your statistics look good. But over time, those challenges you didn't fix before kind of catch up with you. And that's when you start having real deliverability issues.
It's like
Um,
it's like anything. If there's a problem and you let it go, it tends to get worse and worse. Even if it's in tiny increments that are not noticeable over time, you're going to see a major degradation in overall performance. Is that a
that's
fair?
right.
Yeah.
That is absolutely it. And people, like kind of consider it like a credit score in the sense of like, people can get the dings to the credit score and not really realize like, oh, I had that medical bill that I haven't paid off in a while and now it's hit my now it's affecting my credit score. That's a lot like deliverability. You need to know what to monitor to catch it and avoid it from becoming impactful.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, it's interesting. So does email deliverability, is that like the same across all providers? Like I know that, you've got Gmail, you've got Outlook, you got Yahoo, and I have to assume that they all kind of handle deliverability a little bit differently. So how does it affect different senders?
That's right. So basically, each mailbox provider, coming back to that same credit score model, I think of them like a bank. Some banks are going to accept a 660 for a loan. Some are going to accept a 600, and some are going to only require 700 and up. And that's
Right.
the same thing with email. They're looking at your reputation signals. Are you getting consistent open rates? Are you getting consistent clicks? Are you oversending, undersending, aggressive sending? Do you have good list quality? Practices in place. And each one of those providers has their own hidden algorithm, their own machine learning that helps determine, where do you belong. For example, like Gmail heavily focuses on like engagement and understanding at the domain level how opens, replies, bounces, spam complaints come to a place where like providers like Microsoft are much stricter with their filters in the sense that they also are looking at more technical components and minor spam complaint rates and all these other fun jargon signals that help them determine your rep as a sender.
Yeah. No, it's interesting also. It's like plus like Gmail, like I noticed like because I use Gmail and some emails go into the promotions and some go into forums and some go into my primary inbox. And I do check those once in a while, but
Right.
I can see there's a lot of stuff that go into promotions. And guess what? I don't even see that because Gmail is making a decision for me which box it's going to go into. So talk about that a little bit, particularly, and I'm not as familiar with if whether Outlook or Yahoo have similar types of filters like that, but talk about in particular, because I assume a lot of people are curious, how do they get their emails to hit the inbox and not look like a promotion? And what's the distinction between deliverability versus deliverability, but it's getting filtered, put into a promotions box versus like, seems like a lot to digest there, right?
It is. No, for me, like our primary focus as a brand is like just making sure you hit one of those tabs. So there's when it comes to whether it's going to be an inbox placement for a promo placement versus social placement, it's a matter of initially partially content, ensuring that content in nature doesn't feel promotion or promotion-y and it's or more of a marketing effort, I guess, in that essence, versus like an update. It's going to be like a transactional notice, like a password reset or a verification code, etc. But the strategy that we take or implement is A, just making sure you get there, getting into one of those tabs, but then B, helping work with you to advise your content and your strategy. Because the more engagement you get and the way your content is tailored will help determine if you're going to hit the inbox versus promo versus content or versus social.
Got it. So I think for a lot of people, they look at their open rates and that's kind of it, right? But I mean, what are the warning signs? Like, how do I even know? How do I even have awareness about whether or not there's things with my email that are preventing it from, or some segments, some percentage of them from not being delivered? So it's working really well for some segment, but another segment, it's it's not working well at all. Like, what are the warning signs and how do I kind of segment it in a way where I can detect these types of issues?
Absolutely. So one of the biggest things, of course, is sudden drop in open rates or sudden spikes or upheavals in your engagement metrics, whether that's unsubscribes or your click through rate seems to be in a really wonky place than usual. So of course, I always say trust your data, monitor if you have somebody who can own that responsibility of monitoring and making sure things look performant from the signals perspective. Do that. The other part in monitoring is there's tools like Google Postmaster, which is a free tool that is available for all bulk senders through Google that you can adamantly see the signals that they're monitoring and trying to see how your deliverability performance. Yahoo has a similar one with the Yahoo Sender Hub, which they recently launched about a month and a half or so ago now. Microsoft has a tool called SNDS, where if you have dedicated IPs, they also perform the same insights, so you can visually see where you stand today as a sender to their network. One of the big things in that too is monitoring spam complaint rates. So other providers will have feedback loops, or your ESP itself will monitor those feedback loops or provide you the insights to those feedback loops, so you can see, like, hey, this last email got 500 spam complaints versus the last one before that got 5. That's a huge shift. Maybe something in that content, the audience, something I did there wasn't the right strategy. And then, the other part too is just like I tell brands all the time, if you're getting this unsettling feeling of like revenue coming from email isn't the way it used to be, you probably are having some sort of email and deliverability issue
Yeah,
because,
it's worth taking a look, and
right,
and probably the cost of investigating is probably far less than what it's costing you in lost business by your emails not getting delivered.
that's right. And then our experience, like 9 out of every 10 incidents where we've seen impactful issues, was there were clear warning signs beforehand. The reputation dropped, the spam complaint rate spiked, the engagement metrics dropped. But maybe that happened over a 6 month period instead of a 1 month period. Or maybe that happened rapidly and nobody was really monitoring to catch it. That's when deliverability comes more impactful, and it takes longer to repair and bring things back up to speed.
Excellent. All right. Well, that brings me to the next section of what we're going to talk about. I'm going to name this portion of our conversation email no-nos. Like
Yes,
what are the things that, I should really avoid doing to make sure that I'm definitely not going to end up causing myself deliverability issues. Some of these
absolutely.
might make common sense, but I bet you there's probably at least a few items on this list where are not kind of mainstream, like people don't understand that this can cause problems. And that's probably where a lot of the issues come from, is that you're doing something that you didn't even know was a no-no, right?
That's right. No, that's absolutely it. And I guess to start with is always that email authentication piece. So making sure your SPF, your DKIM, and your DMARC are properly aligned. These are basically authentication protocols that mailbox the recipient gets to review and say, hey, okay, if mail for Kevin comes from MailChimp, that's safe mail, and I clearly should accept it, and that's Kevin. Versus, oh no, Kevin has a piece of mail now coming from HubSpot or another tool that he doesn't regularly use. I probably shouldn't take that message. I should probably reject it or put it in the spam folder and, verify with Kevin, did he send that message or was that a spoofing incident or something? That's probably the easiest fixed, and the mailbox providers have been starting to enforce that even stricter back in 2024, and it's just continued onward. Originally, Google kind of started that trend, then Yahoo. That was the whole Yahoo Go mess at the beginning of 2024. Microsoft earlier this year decided to come onto alignment, and I think all providers will go that way in the coming months, if for the ones that have not. The other piece I think that's important is cleaning your list, making sure you're using a proper email hygiene or verification tool or both, and ensuring that your list has valid addresses that still accept mail and are still
Yeah,
open.
so talk a little bit more deeply about that, because you hear the term email hygiene thrown around, but like what does that really mean? Like what are the steps of email hygiene at a high level?
Sure. There are many different, well, I guess starting off before you go inside of the actual using a tool or a third party to verify, first is looking inside of your lists and seeing like segmentation and what is your active subscriber list versus your non-active subscriber list. Smart brands and smart marketers may even segment that further on like, okay, this list are people who've engaged in the last 30 days. These are people who engaged the last 90 days, the last 6 months, dot, dot, dot.
And
But once you
what are
kind of,
and what are those measures of engagement? I like when you're saying, okay, I'm segmenting into levels of engagement, like how do you bucket those? Like,
right, it can be open. So, does that email opened in the last 3 months? It can be click. Was that email clicked in the last 6 months, 3 months? It can be website traffic. Did they purchase something, buy something, engage something, and clearly that email address was still valid? So looking at those couple, between your web metrics and your actual ESP and engagement metrics and seeing what those users did. Once you kind of build those segments, Then it's kind of finding this engagement threshold. I tell brands all the time, like once you divide that out by like 1 to 3 months, 4 to 6 months, 6 to 12, you'll see that clearly eventually, if you send the same content to all those audiences, you'll see maybe one segment is underperforming because the other. And the reality is, with a lot of these ESPs relying on like CPM pricing, if you're sending to a lists of people that haven't engaged in months, years, you're wasting money and time anyways. But the other part of that is then once you've figured out that segment, you can do a process also called email hygiene or verification. So there's many different tools. Email Industries has one called Alfred.email, which does the basics of what all verification tools do. So it does this process where it reaches out to the mailbox provider and says, hey, does this email address exist? Can it accept mail? It won't tell us if it's going to inbox or spam folder, but at least it can tell us that the address actually can accept your
Can it tell you
message.
if it's an active, in other words, if someone's actually engaging or
Right. Yeah. In most instances, it'll just say that the email address is valid and acceptable, and you can send a message to it. And that's the usual terminology they use. The other piece with Alfred compared to other tools is it has this hygiene database of 1.2 billion known like malicious actors and frequent complainers and bot-like addresses. So addresses we clearly see are threatening. And it creates a score telling you that 10 is the safest to send, one is absolutely don't send. There's clearly something wrong with it. So senders should look at those unengaged pieces of their list, hygiene it, try to do win back strategies to see if they can retain that list. And once you've kind of done that the first time, it's then building a strategy on how to keep subscribers engaged, knowing your engagement windows. And when people start to fall in that lower end of the engagement window, it's been 8 months since they last engaged with you, create a plan on how you're going to win them back.
yeah. And I would assume like part of, one of the factors that affects that level of engagement is really the frequency with which you're sending emails to a particular email address. If you're like every single day, 3 times a day, people like, I would assume tend to tune you out. And if you don't send anything ever, you're not going to engage them. So,
Right.
um, how does frequency really impact deliverability? And
Yeah.
how do you find the right cadence?
Yeah, so it's all dependent on essentially your brand. So, like, first is, I always tell brands if you've never asked or don't have a managed preference center or whatever, ask, find a managed preference center, see what your audience engagement recipients want to receive to be smarter at the point of when you get that contact, whether that's through a web, newsletter sign up or whatever, you can also ask them their frequency. Or if you do the double opt-in process, ask them during the double opt-in, hey, when should I receive mail? The other piece in that is then just kind of after asking the preferences, monitoring the signals, creating those segmented lists. When you see people start to fall out of the activity window or what you say that should be an engaged user versus an unengaged user, then pulling them out of the funnel and trying to win them back in an unengaged segment to bring them back to the table. In
Yeah.
our experience, like 1 out of every 6 brands we work with have a deliverability issue that has a rise due to some poor sending practice, list fatigue, some sort of poor segmentation that they didn't tailor right to the audience that they were supposed to receive. They got massive spam complaints, massive engagement metrics, and over time it affected their reputation.
Yeah. And most companies just kind of are turning on email campaigns and setting it and forgetting it and never going back and looking at really getting into the KPIs of how it's really performing. And so your recommendation is like you should constantly be doing audits on a regular cycle just to make sure that everything is still performing the way it's supposed to perform. Correct.
That's right. Have somebody own it, have somebody on the team who's dedicated to keeping an eye on the metrics and helping you strategize when things start to look wrong. This is the strategy we pivot to.
Yeah. So is this me being outdated or is this actually the case? Like I've heard like, if you have HTML in an email versus like, images, things like this, it affects like whether something is considered to be going to get picked up as spammy and it'll affect deliverability. Can you talk a little bit about like some of those, I don't know, call them the design features or what's in your email and how it might positively or negatively impact deliverability?
Absolutely. Well, I always say first and foremost, deliverability is always going to have more heavily focus on your reputation as a sender and less on the content. But the content still comes to play with how audiences receive your messaging. And if the audience is, inadherently not liking your messaging, that will inadherently affect your reputation. And it's a whole cycle. There is still some weight in spammy words and things that the filters may flag at some providers. But yeah, the big things is like making sure you have clean, lightweight HTML code that renders fast. You have to think some of these mailbox providers are getting billions and billions and billions of emails per day. If your
Yeah.
email takes that tool 5 minutes to load, you're going to have bad deliverability. That's just, it's a no brainer. The other piece is like making sure you're not overusing images, you're not having broken links, you're having templates that that are granular, not super huge with a ton of detail to them, making sure your links are in themselves safe. They are hosted at a safe place. They're clearly not multiple redirects or doing other things that may look spammy in nature. And that's especially important when it comes to B2B filters like Proofpoint and Mindcaps for those kind of brands. And just making sure they're accessible too, because the more and more with accessibility, I think, has become a strain. So making sure you have your text only versions readily available, etc.
Cool. So yeah, some people think, email just doesn't work anymore. Like they see their inbox getting filled up, whatever. Like, what do you say to business owners that say, oh, we've tried email before, it didn't work, or we don't think it's going to work, or like, you know, what's the trend? Like, does email actually work now,
Yeah,
or is it really just kind of saturated and people ignore it and it's just not effective anymore?
I think email is always still going to continue to work, and it has continued to work. The biggest piece I think that brands don't think about is how to monitor and manage their engagement and really understanding, email sometimes is a little bit more of the long game. You're not going to have that instant, gratification like you would with a social media ad or with a YouTube video ad. So versus email, you're more looking to re-engage and build an audience of people that are genuinely interested in your service, product, and consistently come back. A number of major companies, email is their primary email or revenue and marketing channel to this day. And it should continue to be. Email also, and from my experience, is the cheapest of all the different, lead generation funnels you can do.
Yeah, and it can be a very effective way of attracting people who are maybe earlier in the buying journey. Maybe they don't even have a strong commercial intent at the moment, but it's a great way to kind of warm them up and familiarize them with the availability of your offer so that when they do become in market, they have that. It's an inexpensive way to familiarize them with whatever your offering is, right?
Exactly. And that's where, the thoughtful brands that perceive and personalize and make content that tailors to those specific segments and audiences, those are the ones that succeed versus the ones that are like, you know what, I'm going to send 5 million emails every day, or I'm going to send to an audience of 5 million 6 times a day. And that's what's going to get me traffic. No, you're emailing them 6 times a day. Who would you want to be phone called cold call 6 times a day from a call center? No. So treat the same as email. You want to get an engagement relatively that's influential, important to you, and is done in a thoughtful manner and basis.
All right, cool. Well, you know, MindShare is not about a sales pitch, but I also want to give you a couple minutes to talk about what Email Industries does. So I'm a company, like, who comes to you? Like, who is it that is in need of your services, and what is it that you can do for them? Do you have like an audit of someone's email campaign? Do you fix email deliverability problems? What is it that email industry can offer to audience members today?
Absolutely. So, email industries, we service all levels of different companies from mom and pop shops to Fortune 500s. We've custom built our pricing so that we can support these different variety of client levels. Some of my favorite clients are, the husband and wife starting up their business and trying to make email successful for them. It brings me joy to see their business go from a 500 to a $10,000, because of our email efforts, which makes me happy. But we offer over 33 technical different services, whether that's an email deliverability audit, where we're helping see where things stand today and where things can be improved, remediation, where we're jumping in and helping fix those active issues alongside of you. We also offer programs like monitoring and alerting so that, before these signals become impactful to your brand, we typically will catch them and will alert you to prevent them. One of the big stats I like to say is this year alone, we've monitored over 250,000 alerts within 2025. And within those 250,000 alerts, many of them being like minor block listings that weren't really threatening, or, inbox placement tests that had some not great performance. But this has been like a 15% rise compared to what we saw with the prior year with a similar client pool. So it means that deliverability is becoming more and more important, and we're providing services to ensure that you stay in the inbox and prevent problems.
Stay in
um,
the inbox. I can see the t-shirt, right? In the inbox. Right.
Email's never dead. Stay in the
Right.
inbox.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I'll take a royalty on that. Uh, yeah. Well, Larry, thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining today and educating our audience. They're all, business owners that are trying to figure things out. And, we all have a million things coming across our plate, and we're trying to solve those everyday problems. So thank you very much for offering your expertise.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate the time, Kevin.
Yeah, of course. And thanks to our audience for attending MindShare today, where we always try and help you solve your problems more efficiently. Please join us next time on MindShare. We look forward to helping you again. Take care and have a great day.